It is quite common to refer to Jesus as a carpenter. You might even see bumper stickers on people's car that say, "My boss is a Jewish carpenter," by which they mean Jesus. But the Greek word tekton, which is translated by most Bibles as carpenter, is better understood as builder. Growing up and learning the trade of tekton from his father Joseph, Jesus would have learned stonemasonry and bricklaying along with carpentry. Many Palestinian homes were made of stones or mud bricks held together with some kind of plaster. The wealthier people had 2 floors. The animals lived in the base of the house and ate from mangers dug out of the floor or made with bricks and plaster. Cooking and eating and sleeping were done in one room on the 2nd floor, and roofs were formed by laying poles across the walls and then building up with a mixture of clay and straw and waterproof lime. The roofs provided extra entertaining space. You could catch a cool breeze if you chose to eat your dinner on your outdoor space on your roof. So Jesus knew what he was talking about when he referred to a wise man who built his home on a rock. He had earned his builder's credentials long before he became a traveling rabbi. You can just imagine listeners nodding in agreement, as most of them had seen this scenario played out. They had watched people build their homes in the long, dry summer months, selecting the most attractive sites in the sandy hollows, only to be washed away when the rains came, filling those hollows with rushing torrents of water. The western hills of Galilee receive about 35 to 40 inches of rain, much the same as the state of New York. But the Jordan Valley and the Sinai receive only 8 inches a year. The earth is dry and hard and doesn't absorb the water well. So when the rains came, there is flooding in places that might have looked safe and dry in the summer months. First century wise homeowners would try to build in the limited safe areas first, and those who could not afford the safe areas would try to build well so that when disaster came, the house could survive. Notice that both Jesus and his listeners knew that the floods would come. In our day, we have technology to predict when and where and how much rain will fall. We have levees and dams and other methods of flood control, making it possible to select a safe building site. But it is not possible, ever, to build a life that escapes all storms. Financial storms can blow into our lives through economic downturns and through layoffs. It takes just one diagnosis, one bad test, to set off a medical squall. One little cut on your foot of a diabetic can result in a raging, life-threatening wound requiring amputation. And our lives look like they've been hit by a tornado when they are hit by divorce or the death of a loved one. We can't avoid storms, but we can choose to build on a strong foundation. So what does life built on the foundation of Christ look like? Jesus said, "Whoever hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise one who builds on a rock-solid foundation." This passage is the finale of his Sermon on the Mount, which gave us the Beatitudes and taught us about resolving conflicts with enemies and giving to the needy and praying with and trusting in God. So let's start with what listening to the Spirit and doing God's will does not look like on a global scale. It does not look like rockets, artillery fire, and midnight bombs. It does not look like dead children in either the Gaza or Israel. It does not look like political battles over people in land in the Ukraine that have elevated to a point where a civilian plane has been shot out of the sky. It does not look like the death of 298 travelers. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." And he also said, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." I think that violence does not express God's love on a global scale or on a personal scale. Murdering with weapons is not God's will, and neither is murdering souls with anger, judgment, and hurtful words. Jesus asked us to be at peace with our family and our friends and the person sitting next to us in the pew. Jesus asked us to turn the other cheek to those who were within striking distance of us, to give more than we were asked to when dealing with others, to go the extra mile and help others even if they're strangers. On a community scale, maybe hearing and doing God's will looks like rebuilding people's homes after a flood, even if they've built in the sandy hollows. This month, more than 265 volunteers from the United Methodist Volunteers in Mission, the Samaritan's Purse, and the Disciples of Christ, and the Mennonite Disaster Service will be housed by families of faith in the Anchorage and Fairbanks area so they can complete the final leg of a journey to help rebuild communities hit by last year's flooding and ice jams along the Yukon River. Watch this short clip about this presentation, about this project which began last summer. On a community scale, God's will looks like smiley faces and helpful hands of the folks who work to rebuild homes and lives. On a personal scale, we too can help others rebuild after a storm with hope and helpful hands. We can visit people in the hospital or in prison. We can send cards of encouragement to people who are ill or have lost a spouse. We can take meals to those who are recovering from surgery. We can check in with families who have a spouse on active duty overseas. We can give to the needy through the food pantry. We can end deaths by malaria by donating to the Imagine campaign. We can help a youngster learn and grow by ensuring he or she has the basics in the back-to-school backpacks. It is up to each of us to listen carefully to the Spirit so that we do God's will. And it's difficult to listen to the Spirit above all our other concerns. Sometimes that voice of comfort says, "Don't go out of your way to help that person. You're doing too much already. You're going to get all stressed out." The voice of control says, "You don't have to give to that ministry or person. You can't be sure your money's going to be used as you wish, and besides, you really don't know them, and you have to look after your own needs first." And the voice of anger plots revenge rather than forgiveness. Reading the Bible, listening to our traditions, using our reason, and praying will help us sort out God's will from our own urges and drives. The Spirit's voice gives life and operates in love, and that's the one we should listen to. Storms will come, and rain will fall into everyone's life. When that happens, we hang on to Christ. We depend on our rock-solid foundation and our Christian practices that build a Spirit-filled dwelling. Sportscaster Stuart Scott talked about his battle with cancer when he received the Jimmy V Award for Courage. He reminded people that those who have died have not lost their battle to cancer. You beat cancer by how you live, why you live, and the manner in which you live, he said. During the storm, we continue to live our Christian principles. We continue to listen to and trust the Spirit of love and life. Stuart Scott also said, "The battle is not ours alone. When we have done all we can, we need to rest and let others fight for us. There comes a time to be still and know that God is. Be still and trust that God will work through those around you. United Methodist clinics bringing malaria medicine, volunteers in mission rebuilding homes, financial advisors pointing the way to solvency, an acquaintance with a lead on a job, doctors and nurses helping you heal, or a friend who calls out of the blue just to cheer you up, are all God's work. Sometimes we are the ones in need, and sometimes we are the answer to need. And all the time, we live well when we listen to the Spirit and follow God's will. In first century Israel, each village depended on a tekton to set their foundations right, and each homeowner needed a tekton to construct a sound house. Who will be your tekton? Will you build your life on the words and examples of Jesus Christ? Will you listen to the Spirit and do the will of God? Amen.